The markets had the full spectrum of producers reporting last week. On the one hand, we had Artemis Gold report their second quarter results, which included the first 2 months of commercial production at Blackwater with their $805 all-in sustaining cost average. On the other hand, we saw i-80 Gold report, who's taken a different approach to the market. Rather than focus on getting a single asset into operation, they've taken a multi-mine strategy, with some of those assets containing legacy operations that are still somewhat running. Effectively, they've got their eye on bigger operations, but are collecting what gold they can in the interim, which means some of those figures are less rosy than peers, simply because that just isn't the focus right now. Let's dive in. The second quarter of 2025 saw i-80 Gold post top-line revenue of $28 million. While that figure may not be huge, it was a 287% gain over the second quarter of 2024, which recorded revenue of just $7.2 million. That revenue was off the back of 8,400 ounces of gold being sold over the course of the quarter, which was up 144% over Q2 of last year, when i-80 managed to sell just 3,400 ounces. Average selling prices also played a major role in the increase here, with gold selling for $3,300 an ounce in the current period versus $2,300 and change an ounce last year. Despite improving from last year's gross loss of $12 million, the company posted just $800,000 in gross profits for the second quarter, which after $9 million in pre-development evaluation and exploration expenses, $3.2 million in property maintenance expenses, and $7.3 million in G&A, led to a loss from operations of $19 million as compared to the prior loss of $31 million. After all interest and tax expenses, the company posted a net loss of $30 million, or 5 cents per share, versus a loss of $41 million, or 11 cents per share in the year-ago period. Cash used in operating activities, meanwhile, declined from $25 million to $11 million over the course of the quarter. The big story for i-80, however, is the cash position, following a series of financing rounds that managed to raise the company gross proceeds of $186 million in Q2, while issuing 371 million new units in the process. After starting the period with $13.5 million, i-80 ended the second quarter with close to $134 million in cash on hand. Nevertheless, CEO Richard Young defined the second quarter as a major turning point for i-80 following those successful funding rounds, which no doubt is an achievement, with those funds expected to enable the company to advance development initiatives across 5 gold projects. With the successful completion of those 2 funding rounds, one sized at $173 million and the other at $13 million, i-80 was able to complete the first steps of the recapitalization plan, resulting in a total of $42 million in payments being made on gold and silver prepay instruments. Warrants issued under those offerings could also provide the company with an additional $130 million in capital, should the company be able to get a lift on their share price to entice investors to exercise those warrants. As it currently stands, the company expects to spend about $92 million of that fresh capital through mid-2026 on current development plans. Funds are to be used for construction activities, drilling, permitting, and technical studies across all 5 gold projects. However, i-80 is already broadcasting that they are working to secure further funding, discussions for which are ongoing. Current funding options include debt facilities, royalty sales, and the sale of the non-core FAD project. The current plan is expected to close out by mid-2026. All right, let's get to the production figures. i-80 in the second quarter saw gold output come from 3 of their assets: Granite Creek Underground, Ruby Hill, and Lone Tree. Detailed financial results were only provided for Granite Creek within the news release, but a bit more detail was contained within the MD&A. Granite Creek saw a total of 6,000 ounces sold from the operation over the course of the second quarter, bringing sales year-to-date to 9,100 ounces, which is fairly in line with annual guidance of 20,000 to 30,000 ounces. Those ounces were produced at a mining cost of $175 per ton, alongside processing costs of $133 a ton and site G&A costs of $34 a ton. Well, normally we'd go ahead and calculate cash costs based on those figures. We weren't provided with recovery rates. Ruby Hill, meanwhile, saw 665 ounces sold from the heap leach pads. While no mining costs were incurred, processing costs stood at $1,639 per ounce of gold produced, while site G&A costs came in at $1,174 an ounce. Year-to-date, the operation has produced just over 1,100 ounces of gold. Finally, Lone Tree saw a total of 1,800 ounces sold from the heap leach pads, with processing costs of $732 an ounce and site G&A costs of $219 an ounce. Well, year-to-date, gold production has hit just under 3,200 ounces. Overall, i-80 is expecting to produce between 30 and 40,000 ounces of gold this year, of which 20 to 30,000 ounces is expected to come from Granite Creek, while 10,000 ounces is expected to come from the combination of Ruby Hill and Lone Tree. While these targets are not currently on pace to be met, we will say here that they are awfully close to hitting the lower ends of those ranges. All right, so let's wrap it up. The second quarter was a bit of a mixed bag for i-80 depending on how rosy-eyed you want to be. Arguably, the results weren't great, but they were a strong improvement on a year-over-year basis. They're still losing money, but they are losing less than they were. And well, they managed to convince enough investors that there's some upside left here, even with all the dilution as of late. Chances are, if you're in this name or considering it at this point, you're looking at the bigger picture, which means that near term, these results don't really matter a whole lot. Instead, the priority is to focus on the balance sheet and for management to ensure that the grand strategy can be funded and seen through to completion. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. As always, if there's stories you want us to cover, please let us know in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, if you want more mining content, check out our website over at thedeepdive.ca. All right, everybody, thanks for watching.